Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. There are seasons in your investor life where you either play offense or defense. What should you be doing now as we refresh the up to 5 ways that real estate simultaneously pays you anything less than a 20 to 25% rate of return in buy and hold real estate investing is actually disappointing? How can that be? Today on Get Rich Education. Fortunately for you, Congress has made it possible to get up to $200,000 out of your current 401k or TSP to invest in real estate or your own business, and that's even if you're still working. The thing is, you can get all this money tax-free. The EQRP is your secret weapon. With the CARES Act expiring soon, the EQRP company helps you unleash your retirement funds now. Learn more and text message QRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Asmara, Eritrea to Ashtabula, Ohio, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Thanks for being here, but you're not here for me. You're here for you. In your investor life, are you playing offense at this time, or are you playing defense right now? Or in general, longer term, are you more offensively oriented, which correlates with more risk-taking and higher returns? Or are you more defensively minded, where you'd rather have less risk and lower return? Are your mindset and actions aligned toward offense or defense? Well, I've got an answer for you here, and you're going to have a really valuable takeaway. Anything less than a 20 to 25% annual rate of return in real estate is really actually disappointing.
What you talking about, Willis?
What I'm talking about, Willis, really this all comes back to how when you buy income property the right way, you are paid up to 5 ways simultaneously, and a stock or a mutual fund that typically only pays you 1 way, maybe 2. I think that the easiest way for you to understand the 5 ways you're paid and even celebrate these 5 ways you're paid, because this is pretty compelling stuff here, is to use an example. Now, I've discussed this before, so if you're a longtime listener, what I'm going to do is put the 5 ways through a new filter for you. And if you're a newer listener, say in the last year, what I'm about to say could completely change your investing thought paradigm for the rest of your life. In fact, compound interest is lame and rarely, if ever, builds real wealth in real life. I'll tell you what does here. And yes, I know that this is abject heresy. It is replete blasphemy to criticize compound interest in the finance world. I am surely guilty of committing financial profanity right there. This is really fundamental stuff I'm about to share with you here, and yet the real paradox is that most real estate investors don't even understand this. This is pretty fun to do. We're going to add up the 5 ways you're paid and determine your total year 1 rate of return here. Let's say that you purchase a $100,000 property, $100K, and no worries. If that's too small time for you, this is all based on ratios, so it scales up to a $1 million or $10 million property. And sometimes I wonder how much longer a 100K property will even be a feasible example for me to use, as inflation makes 100K properties less common all the time. But with your newly bought 100K rental single-family home, you buy it with a tenant already residing there, where the monthly rent income exceeds the monthly expenses. That right there is a big part of buying, right? With your 20% down payment, you have $20K out of pocket then, and an $80K loan. So the first of 5 ways you're often paid is with appreciation. Let's just say that your property appreciates from 100K up to 106K. That is just commensurate with real estate's historic appreciation rate of 6%. But here's the big aha moment. Your $6,000 gain is based on only your $20,000 down payment. Well, that's your ROI formula. Your gain divided by how much you have invested. Well, your 6K divided by 20K is a 30% return to you. Really? How did that happen exactly? How do you have a 30% return from just this first one of 5 ways you're paid? This is because you achieved a 6% return on both your 20K of skin in the game and the 80K borrowed from the bank. This right here is what is known as financial leverage. Financial leverage means that your return is 30%. And no wonder I'm known for saying that compound interest is lame and leverage builds real wealth. More on that soon. The second way you're paid simultaneously is with cash flow. It's your monthly rent income minus all of the expenses, your mortgage, vacancy, insurance, maintenance, taxes, utilities, and management. We'll be conservative and say that this leaves you with only $100 of residual income at the end of the month in this case. Annually, that's $1,200 more for you divided by your same 20K down payment. Yes, it's still $1,200 divided by that same 20K of skin you have in the game. Well, that's another 6% return for you. This portion is what is known as the cash on cash return. So far you've got a 30% return from leverage appreciation plus a 6% cash on cash return from that monthly cash flow. And we're still going here because the third of 5 ways you're often paid is with loan pay down. Now, unlike your own home where you pay down your principal mortgage balance with the money that you had to work for and earn, well, here in this case with the rental, your tenant pays the monthly principal portion of your 80K loan on this cash flowing property. Well, at a 6% mortgage interest rate, and we know you can do better than that today, but we're being conservative here, on a 30-year loan, that's about $1,000 that the tenant pays down for your loan for you annually, divided by your still the same 20K of skin in the game means that's another return for you of 5%. This portion is known as your ROA, your return on amortization. We are still going here, still adding up all the ways you're often paid in real estate. The fourth is with tax benefits. You can have a mortgage interest deduction, an ability to pay 0 capital gains tax with a 1031 exchange, and tax depreciation, which can tax shelter part of your rent income even. This gets hard to measure. We're going to conservatively call your investment tailwind from taxes another 5%. There's something else called bonus depreciation that can certainly make this 5% tax tailwind higher, but let's just leave it there. And the fifth and final way is what I call inflation profiting. Very few people understand this. Just like inflation erodes the value of your lump of savings, oppositely, it degrades your mortgage debt balance. And how is that? It's because your 80K loan on this property gets easier to pay back over time as wages and prices typically escalate over time. But see, your bank only asks to be repaid in nominal dollars. Nominal means in name only. While your tenant pays the interest, the bank doesn't ask to be paid in real inflation-adjusted dollars. So just say that over a few years, you had 10% cumulative inflation. Well, then rather than paying back the bank 80K, you really only need to pay them back 72K in inflation-adjusted terms. Well, inflation's been low lately. We'll call this benefit a return of another just 2% to you. Well, there they were, all 5 ways. Let's add them up to see what your total rate of return is. You got a return of 30% from leverage appreciation, then 6% from cash flow, which is that portion known as your cash on cash return, plus another 5% from your ROA, that return on amortization where your tenant pays down your loan for you, then another 5% from tax benefits, 2% from inflation profiting, and your first year total return on investment from this income property is 48%. You just achieved a 48% return, and you did this without taking any inordinate risk. Now, your real life return probably won't be exactly that. It's going to be higher, or it's going to be lower. And there are a few other caveats here. I think you probably realize that this example is simplified. If we had like 18 spreadsheets, then maybe we could get an exact number. Like rather than a 48% total rate of return for you, it might be 46.16 or something like that. But 18 spreadsheets doesn't work in audio format, as we've just broken it down simply here on Get Rich Education, episode 302. Note that in this example I just gave, we did not factor in your buyer mortgage loan closing costs, but the seller can often help you pay these. And of course, risk still exists. If you buy property in a losing job market, or you hire a disreputable property manager, well, then your return can erode, and you are still going to have some inevitable problems along the way. It just happens in real estate. Let's also note that your property insurance premium was considered in that example. That hedges you from a lot of major loss types, and that your management cost was considered here, meaning that your income is largely passive. Also, be mindful that after your 48% return in year one of this hypothetical example that we just worked through, notice that your return typically drops lower in future years. Maybe it's down to 38% in the second year and 29% in the third year. And why is this? Well, that is primarily due to the fact that equity accumulates in the property, and equity has zero rate of return. Compound interest, well, with that, you're typically not leveraging other people's money with compound interest. Look, in the example that I just used, you're not just growing from the return on your own money. You achieved that high return because you got to use both your own money plus 3 other parties' money at the same time. The banks for the leverage, the tenants for the income and the return on amortization, and the governments for the tax incentives, plus really the government's policies for the inflation profiting benefit too, if you think about it. So with just a 20% down payment, you got access to getting the return on other people's money all over the place. Another risk is to be mindful of over leveraging. What's over leveraging really mean? That means that you've borrowed so aggressively that, say you get in a situation where the tenant's rent income no longer meets or exceeds the monthly property expenses. Well, that's negative cash flow from over leveraging. So with these 5 ways, now you understand how real estate makes ordinary people wealthy. Right there, that's it. That's the thing. Now you actually know how to keep score with real estate investing. Now you understand how less than a 20 to 25% total rate of return is actually disappointing. This right here is leverage rather than compound interest. And long term, one's hopes for compound interest, they get eroded and worn down to nothing after applying something that longtime listeners can almost repeat after me, after applying those deleterious effects of inflation and emotion and taxes and fees and volatility. But if you understand what I described there in that example, you understand something that billionaire, yes, billionaire with a B, billionaire real estate investors do not understand. Billionaire real estate investors don't understand what you now know. So when it comes down to, are you playing offense or defense as the theme for your overall investing strategy? The answer is, when you're paid 5 ways and you have those multiple facets, you have the ability to constantly do both. You're playing both offense and defense at the same time, all the time. And by the way, they say that offense wins games, but defense wins championships. I think it was legendary Alabama football coach Paul Bear Bryant that's credited with saying some version of that. I don't know whether that's so true or not, but you do have multiple offenses and defenses, multiples. What I'm talking about here with the 5 ways you're paid, first, there's appreciation. That's playing offense. Cash flow, that's more predictable than appreciation, and that's playing offense as well. Return on amortization, that third one, that's defense because it's slow and predictable and it builds illiquid equity. The fourth way, taxes, that's defensive as well. It's kind of built in, predictable, and it really just recurs when you do your taxes annually. And the fifth way, inflation profiting, that's defense as well. So there you go. With one single family rental home or apartment building, you've played offense 2 ways and defense 3 ways, all at the same time. And when you're paid 5 ways, if one of them or 2 of them stop providing you with yield, well, then you've still got 3 or 4 ways that are providing you with yield. But yeah, these return sources, they're just not apparent to a lot of people. You know, I was recently doing a review of one of my own larger apartment buildings with an experienced investor and with my property manager because the cash flow basically dried up on that building. And for example, this apartment building has $2,100 of tenant-made mortgage principal paydown every month. So that's $25K per year in equity buildup from the tenant-made mortgage principal paydown. So $25K divided by the $475K in equity in that building, well, that's a return on amortization of about 5% on this particular apartment building. So I think that the real takeaway here is invest in something where you're paid multiple ways, where you can invest in offense and defense at the same time, and it pays you income so that you can actually begin enjoying your life now or soon, and not just some maybe someday thing, which really correlates with more of a compound interest approach. If you think about it, a central theme of this show is really how to optimize the 5 ways that you're paid and how to avoid mistakes is really what we talk about over time here. And this is really a huge part of the compelling why for real estate that is so often missed, that big why. You want to own the real property yourself as well to make sure that all 5 of these benefits are not diluted. And you also want to have a good loan on your property to amplify your ROI over the long term. You want that leverage. And as you know, I am pro good debt. I have no interest in paying down low interest rate debt that the tenant already pays down for me, and then inflation further debases. Instead of using that dollar to pay down debt, you could use that dollar as a down payment on another property, expanding your empire. And gosh, with interest rates this low, it puts an exclamation point on everything that I just said. It puts an exclamation point on the fact that you don't want to be paying down your debt here in the early 2020s decade. Paying down good debt, that's one of the last things that I would do with my money. You lose leverage every time that you do that. So turning a liquid dollar into equity, what that just did is it transferred cash into equity. Well, financial freedom is achieved when you do the opposite, when you transfer equity into cash flow. The probability that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and start accelerating pay down on low rate fixed mortgage debt tied to this cash flowing property, that probability is like 0. It's about the same as the chance is that my dad wakes up tomorrow and starts listening to the Notorious B.I.G. with Junior Mafia.
I chilled, came out with the Ready to Die. Everybody was feeling it. You know what I'm saying? And I rested for 2 years, worked on the Junior Mafia. Lil' Kim, now it's time for me to come do my thing, you know?
Yeah, definitely not happening. Not for my dad anyway, not his style. Sounds all right to me. I might drop that in during a workout or something. You're listening to a more detailed discussion about the 5 ways that real estate pays you. We're talking about it through a fresh lens of offense versus defense here on Get Rich Education, episode 302. I strongly believe it is very difficult to get wealthy without debt. Often you won't achieve freedom without debt, and it's going to be all right when your debt is reliably outsourced to others like tenants. And you know, at one point in my life, when I still worked for an employer, and the last day job I ever had was working in the quality assurance section for a state Department of Transportation, by the way. At one point, I realized that every dollar that I locked into a 401k or a stock, that is a dollar that I cannot use to leverage other people's money. So that epiphany, that realization was a real turning point. Doing everyday stuff doesn't get you ahead. Checking the Robinhood app every 15 minutes is not going to build real, durable wealth for you. And, sometime before these realizations, it was me thinking about how to get more out of life. And it was that realization that you can't live below your means. You've got to expand your means. To achieve financial freedom, it sure isn't going to happen by canceling Netflix for $10 a month. It's also not going to happen if you save $80 on airline tickets by adding an extra layover on your trip itinerary. You just added 3 hours of low quality time to your life and you're never going to get that time back. That is cheesy. That is unattractive. It's not about saving money on car gasoline or butterball turkeys. I'm not saying you can never do those things. Sometimes you've got to do what you've got to do, but people need to stop being congratulated for being cheap or even focusing on frugality. I mean, gosh, some of that stuff can just make people miserable. And people that say, I want to live frugally, they don't really want to live frugally. They actually want to say, I want to live well, but they don't know how to do that. They don't have a vehicle to move forward with. It's kind of like when we had T. Harv Eker here on the show a few years ago. It's about setting your mental thermostat higher so that you can get greater wealth and freedom for yourself. And with the 5 ways you're paid, like I've described, hopefully I've charted a substantially clear path forward for you so that you can do that. Well, with the up to 5 ways that real estate often pays you, that's something that I first started talking about more than 5 years ago. I've never heard anyone else talk about it before, so as far as I know anyway, I guess that I have coined this or whatever. But since I began talking about it, I hear other people talking about it too, even other educational platforms. Now, I do own 3 real estate trademarks, so what do I think about others now teaching the 5 ways you're paid? I'll discuss that in just a few minutes here. I'm also going to discuss who influenced me and give those people some credit. And this includes a couple people that you surely never heard about before. Hey, if you would like to see the 5 ways you're paid in one easy to read infographic that would all fit on one sheet of paper so it's really clear for you to understand, I'll send you a colorful electronic 5 ways you're paid infographic. All you've got to do is go to getricheducation.com/book. That has got to be one of the greatest deals anywhere, where you can opt in to get the electronic version of my international best-selling book for free, emailed right to you right away. And then a few weeks later, the 5 ways you're paid infographic is automatically sent to you as well. That's at getricheducation.com/book. More next. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Property investors can get killed with maintenance costs. That's less likely when you buy brand new construction. Let me tell you about JWB Real Estate Capital in bustling Jacksonville, Florida. They pioneered the build-to-rent model where you can invest in new construction, turnkey rental property. That's why JWB was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. To learn more and see inventory, start now at newconstructionturnkey.com. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They provided you with more loans than anyone. It's where I got my last few loans, and they finance single-family income property up to 4plexes. They're the #1 lender for both beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and you'll end up with your custom plan for expanding your cash flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is JWB Real Estate Capital's Greg Cohen. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm Keith Weinhold. I hope you like our humorous moments to lighten up the show here. Hey, you run a little math on audio and it begs for some embellishment to spice things up. When it comes down to the 5 ways you're paid in real estate investing, since I first discussed this more than 5 years ago, I've noticed other real estate investing educators now seem to teach the same thing. I don't know whether they credit that to me or not. And you know something? I don't really care whether they give me the credit or not. I mean, it's cool if they do, but the more important thing to me is that conscientious people get the information. I want it to be shared. To me, that is so much more important than me or anyone getting the credit, so just share it. I mean, helping the people is more important than getting the credit. I think that the world would be a better place. Imagine if everyone put helping the people ahead of getting the credit. I don't own trademarks so that I can go after people that say the same stuff I do. That's just not in my nature. I would rather do productive things with my time, and I want other people to share the ideas. The trademarks are there just because I wouldn't want someone else to swoop in and tell me that I can't use something that I might have come up with in the first place. When it comes to helping the people and getting the credit, now everyone has influences, things that they learn from others, and you and I are no different in that way. Even those people that have influenced you, they were influenced by someone else before them. Well, I do like to give credit to those that I learned from, so though I know he's a polarizing figure to some people, credit is due to Robert Kiyosaki in the Rich Dad Company. You can learn more about them at richdad.com. The most important lesson that I learned there is don't live below your means, expand your means. It is more important to increase your income than it is to cut your expenses. Don't make a budget. You're just tearing things down. Instead, build a cash flow statement. Now you're constructing. Now you're making more of yourself and not less. These are really Rich Dad principles, and they help develop my mindset. Now, as for who helped turn this mindset into something actionable, I have got to give props to the real estate guys, Robert Helms and Russell Gray. You can learn more about them at realestateguysradio.com. That's the first place that I learned, for example, that in real estate, the market is more important than the property. I mean, look, you can't very well be in your crib with your trading app and just order up real estate, even though people are building online marketplaces. But one mistake people make is that they buy property because the numbers look good based on some YouTube video that they watched on how to crunch the numbers, but they don't know anything about the market or the team where that property resides. So they go buy the property, then only after they go buy it, well, then next they start looking for a property manager and hope that there's a competent one that can handle it. And then after that, they try to figure out the market that they already bought in. That does not work. They've got it backwards. If the market and your property manager check out, then and only then do you get the property in that market lastly. And you know, it's kind of sad when people get that wrong. That's why people walk away from real estate and why they say that real estate doesn't work. Well, no, instead, that investor just was not very strategic, but you can understand how that happens to smart people. And it was great to have both authors of the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter, here, and the real estate guys. They were all here on Get Rich Education with us multiple times. Another set of influencers are two guys that you have never heard of before. Their names are Chris and Raj. They are simply two longtime friends of mine that bought fourplex buildings when they started out. That got me to make my first ever property, that seminal fourplex building where with a 3.5% down payment, I lived in one unit and rented out the other three. And that's what started it all for me. But these otherwise regular guys, they reinforced that well-known quote from the late Jim Rohn, "You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with." And today I am a collector of real estate. Most of it is in the United States. And being that geography guy that I am, did you know that I have a world map on the wall of our garage? And I have a little red sticker, little red dots on top of those areas where I own property across the map. So yeah, it makes this real estate collecting kind of visual. Maybe you want to try that too. Well, one part of the world that I've been adding more red dots to lately is where I've been buying across Florida. Yeah, areas around Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville, they all make sense from a cash yield perspective. A lot of brand new construction properties have numbers that work in those areas. especially where our Orlando provider, that's Greater Central Florida really, they've been actively sourcing brand new construction property in Sebring, Florida, among other nearby places. Sebring is just about smack dab in the center of peninsular Florida. It's south of Orlando. And these single-family homes there that make the great rentals, they have a metal roof. They're 3-bed, 2-bath, and the prices really are remarkable. $179,900 and $159,900. Yeah, that's for new construction in Sebring, Florida. The rent-to-price ratios are very attractive at about 0.8% or so. That's quite good for new construction because you've also got this tailwind of extremely low interest rates at the same time. And when it's new construction like this, the property insurance premiums are also really reasonable too. If you'd like to learn more about those, you can do so at getricheducation.com/Orlando. And it's not just single-family homes. New construction duplexes are available too. That's at getricheducation.com/Orlando. You know that I often like to leave you with something actionable like this at the end of an episode. And knowing and doing in life are two very different things. And how do we already know about that? Well, a lot of people are not at their ideal body weight, and it isn't because they don't know what to do, they just aren't doing it. And in life, you also need time to figure out just what you want to do. For example, I like eating pizza, but it took me eating a lot of different foods in order to find that out. I had to try and do, and learning is often best done by trial and error. But the thing is that it does not have to be your trial and error. So learn from me. I'll even eat your pizza for you. I help give you the information that you need to make an informed decision. I connect you with property teams with proven track records, many of whom I invest with myself, and then you ultimately choose your investments. There is risk with anything, just absolutely anything in life, and you either take the risk or lose the chance. I think it's helpful too that you follow someone that's been through a recession. I've been investing for nearly 18 years. It'll be 18 years next month, in fact, since I bought that landmark fourplex building. Teach you how to fish or give you a fish? Well, why not do both? You can get the fish itself at getricheducation.com/Orlando. Have you ever wondered where your money is? Well, you know what? The world already has your money. You just need to go out and claim it. I'm Keith Weinhold, grateful as always for your listenership. I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.